Time now for the markets with Leighton. And Leighton, you say the government says that global supplies of corn are on the increase.
That's right, Artis. We'll be talking about those new monthly projections in just a moment. Also in the markets this week, a bearish forecast for cotton. A protest briefly disrupts Alabama poultry processing as fund managers see cattle as a bright spot. The new monthly crop numbers from the USDA were released Tuesday morning the 12th. Extension Ag economist John Michael Riley says the government added some bushels to the estimated corn ending stocks. He discussed the report's potential impact for both corn and soybean marketing with me on Thursday morning. John Michael, you described the latest numbers as largely uneventful, but still a little bit of a headline out of the corn sector, right?
Well, it always gets a headline whenever you see a bump in ending stocks like we saw with this most recent report compared to the report in September. Ending stocks, 866 million bushels of corn there expected to be left over at the end of this marketing year. Again, it was uneventful mainly because that was largely expected due to the fact that September 30th USDA released their quarterly grain stocks report, and that report found a lot more corn in the bins than was expected. Just, you know, the high prices have kind of rationed demand. You know, feed users are trying to go other routes other than corn, and that kind of showed up in the grain stocks report, and that was largely reflected in the most recent supply and demand report that was released just yesterday.
So anybody following USDA numbers in the last month kind of had a pretty good idea of what this report would say.
They kind of knew what was coming down the pike again, but the ending stocks number was still larger than the pre-report estimate of 806 million bushels, so it was a bit of a bullish number in that regard, but for the most part the large jump from last month's WASDE to this month's WASDE wasn't as big a surprise as you know, if you're not following the reports.
And for livestock feeders, the news not necessarily good if they're concerned about cost of feed.
Well, it doesn't erase the fact that we are still dealing with limited supplies of corn throughout the rest of the marketing year. That's still evident in the market.
All right, let's switch to soybeans now because that's an important topic, and there were some good numbers there.
Right, we did. That was probably one of the bigger surprises if you think about the two. Ending stocks of 160 million bushels. The trade was looking for somewhere in the neighborhood of 170 to 180 million bushels of ending stocks for soybeans, and you know that just again largely reflected that grain stocks report. Apparently, you know, we're still seeing a lot of soybeans move go overseas globally. Domestic demand is still kind of there for the most part, so that number was a bit more of a surprise when you think about compare the two.
And we're about 24 hours out now from the release as we record this. What's the market reaction kind of been so far?
Well, at the close of yesterday, almost no reaction to the corn and soybean market. You know, soybeans were up a couple of cents, corn was down a couple of cents, again, because it was mostly expected. Today, mostly down across for most of those, just dealing with some other news entering the market.
Meanwhile, cotton futures tumbled Wednesday in reaction to those new crop reports. DTN says that prices were pressured by a surprising but slight gain in U.S. production, as well as bearish increases in domestic and world cotton ending stocks. Analysts had said the cotton market was vulnerable to a sell-off as report day approached. Now, Mississippi and Alabama were among the handful of states where the government projected slightly higher production. The new report described cotton demand as edgy due to continued uncertainty about the world economy. Forest Products is the source for our trivia quiz on Farm Week this week. What state produces the most plywood in this country? Is the answer Mississippi, Arkansas, Idaho, or Oregon? The answer is coming up before the end of the markets. In neighboring Alabama, a handful of poultry plants reportedly either closed or curtailed production on Wednesday of this week. Media reports indicate Alabama's Hispanic community was encouraged to boycott work to protest that state's immigration law. The Associated Press says it counted a half dozen poultry facilities in Alabama that closed or limited production for the day on Wednesday because of the protest. Alabama's immigration law is currently being challenged in federal court. Well, is the beef sector a bright spot? Analyst Sue Martin says that some fund managers are apparently viewing cattle that way. And in an interview on Market to Market recently, Martin also noted that cow slaughter is still running well ahead of a year ago and making history.
cow slaughter is probably, I want to say the number of cows going, both beef and dairy, going to slaughter is probably second largest since 1984. And at some point, this is going to come back to haunt us. The key is, and I think this is what's been helping us hold the cattle market together, is the fact that, one, the funds have been looking at it as a bright spot, but numbers worldwide have been really down in the beef industry, and our export market's been good, and the dollar has a major thing to play. If we rally this dollar very aggressively, I bet Australia would just love to ship us some beef.
Speaking of shipping, there may be indications that rail traffic is picking up some. Random Links Woodwire reports that Class 1 railroads in the United States and Canada pulled over 11,000 rail cars out of sidings and other storage areas in September. This is the largest drawdown of the idled cars since March of this year. The Association of American Railroads reports that industrial carload shipments grew faster in the month of September after the summer slowdown, and that they reached their highest levels of the year in September. Going back to that trivia quiz now, here's a look at this week's answer for you. It's D that is the correct choice. The state of Oregon is the leading plywood producer in the United States.